Capital Views is sponsored by Northrim Bank, Alaska Oil and Gas Association, ConocoPhillips, and Linden.
Hi, I'm Tim Braden with Alaska Legislative Digest, and welcome to Capitol Views. And a special welcome today to Joelle Hall, the president of Alaska AFL-CIO. So thanks for joining us, Joelle.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Joelle, it's always good to start these things with asking you, what is AFL-CIO and how does it fit into the overall labor movement?
The AFL-CIO stands for the American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organizations, and we are an association of unions. And so we have a relationship with most of Alaska's unions. We do have a couple private unions who don't have an international union affiliated with them. There's an AFL-CIO like the Alaska AFL-CIO in every state in the union. And then we all belong, of course, to the national AFL-CIO. So the relationship, it's a tiered situation. We all have the same situation in every state. So most of Alaska's unions belong to the AFL-CIO. And so we are the political and legislative arm of the collective Alaska labor movement.
Well, that's a big responsibility. So what's on your plate this year? It's been an interesting year, a lot of things going on.
It has been obviously there's lots of things on our plate this year. I think maybe we can talk a little bit about the challenges that everybody's facing in terms of workforce development. It is true that these challenges are everywhere in our country. They seem to be particularly true in Alaska. We seem to have a particularly acute problem in retaining and attracting a workforce. And so I think we have to work a little harder than other states may have to work in order to remedy that problem. That, of course, means that the state of Alaska needs to be spending money on attracting workforce and training people, and in particular, spending resources involving in training the kind of workforce our employers need, right? Because the state does two things. One, it helps train people, and then, of course, it helps connect people with those jobs. So we need to do both those things. It's really important. There's a lot of things underway in Alaska that are kind of reorienting our economy towards the workforce needs, namely the academies model in the Anchorage School District, which will be a direct connection between employers and students coming out of high school. When I talk to folks, I think what we see now is a real interest in trying to find out how to get a hold and talk to kids who are younger than high school so that they start thinking about the options that are open to them, even in junior high. And I think we're reaching one of those moments in time where workforce development is challenging. We have a smaller generation coming behind us. We're going to have to be very clever about how we recruit people to the jobs that this state particularly needs.
Well, Joelle, with there's a real ramp up of construction work on the North Slope, and the overall economy is just kind of humming. How do we, if we're short of workers, the only solution is to import people from the lower 48, and that adds to cost. But do you have any thoughts about that? How can we try to minimize that? Are there more non-resident workers showing up in Alaska?
I don't have any recent statistics, but what I do know is that we have to train our own, and that we have to have a very clear way that a young person in Alaska knows there's a really good job waiting for them. And that isn't always clear. And we know that, college is certainly a path that some people want to go down, but there's lots and lots of jobs that don't require a college degree, where there's no tuition involved, namely union apprenticeship, for example. That there's no tuition involved. It's a great skill. You can make really great wages and you can stay in Alaska. But I think we have a little bit of an education bump, and we're going to have to work harder to recruit those kids. And of course, we'll have to import people, but we should try really hard to keep the people who are leaving from leaving.
Well, Joelle, one of the things that's been in the news a lot this summer has been the pending grocery merger of Kroger's and Cars Safeway. And I know the labor movement has been pretty concerned about that. What's your sense of what's happening with that particular issue?
Well, we had really good news a couple weeks ago that the FTC had agreed to sue over this merger, or they had heard, and they reported back that it was actually the outpouring of concern from Alaskans that really tilted that in their favor, and the overwhelming level of input they had received from Alaskans about how this was going to affect their day-to-day lives. This would have created monopolies in many of our communities and created an enormous amount of pressure to increase grocery prices. Very, very bad for competition. So the FTC heard us. We, of course, were aided. Our congressional delegation, in particular, Representative Peltola, just did an amazing job bringing this to the fore and getting Alaskans mobilized to oppose it. And so right now we're in a good position that the FTC is opposing it. And there's court battles to follow, but this is the best first step we could have asked for.
So this is really, it's just kind of on the back burner for a while then. Has it gone away?
Yeah, it's on the back burner for a while. There will be a court case undoubtedly, and the FTC will have to defend its right to, it's suing to stop the merger. So this becomes now a court battle, but Alaskans have been heard loud and clear about how detrimental this would have been to our neighbors and ourselves in terms of what we pay for groceries and how it would have had the largest ripple effect out here, like calling it the end of the supply chain. So very grateful for everybody who commented, in particular the legislature who unanimously opposed this merger.
Well, it's a concern because we are really on a kind of a thin supply stream up here. Two
Yes,
ships bring most of our consumer goods up here, and relatively fragile distribution systems. So I think Representative Patola has been very vocal about this and has done a good job of explaining the concerns, particularly in rural Alaska.
exactly. It's nice to be heard.
Yeah. Well, Joelle, thank you very much for joining us today, and we will look forward to continuing and staying in touch. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks. Thank you. Bye, Tim.